Yeah, welcome to Rugby Brough Council's Scrutiny Committee meeting this Monday, 19th of June. I'm Councillor Ish Mishri, Chair of this committee. The meeting has been web streamed to the public through the Council's YouTube channel. During the meeting, when asked to speak, please use the push to talk button on the microphone in front of you. This will allow the camera to pan onto your general direction and everyone to hear you. Before we begin the formal agenda, I'm obliged to read out the following fire notice. There is no fire drill scheduled in the building this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, then please could I ask that you make your way out of the building, down the main staircase, and out of the main doors of the town hall, and congregate at the entrance to the Caldecott Park. One officer of the council will give instruction on when it's safe to return to the building. Welcome to the meeting, ladies and gentlemen. Moving into the agenda, first item of business is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on January 30th, 2023, and followed by one on the 19th of May. Obtain agreement from the council, and please sign this copy of that in front of me. So can I ask those who were present on the 30th of January, they were present, to move? Somebody move regardless. Okay, moved by Councillor Mrs. Parker. Can I have a seconder? Okay, Councillor Mrs. Mackenzie. Thank you very much. Take it that's true record of the meeting that took place on the January the 30th. Okay, thank you. I'll sign that. Right, followed by, it's another minute that of the, when it was held on the 18th of May 2023 at the council AGM, and that one was to appoint the chair and vice chair. Can I ask somebody to move that, please? Councillor Mrs. Alice Livesey, and can I have a seconder? Councillor Mrs. Brown. Okay, do I take it to be the true record of those meetings? Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Lynn. Right, second item is any apologies? We have gone.
I have apology, Chair, from Councillor Rabin.
Okay. Do we have a sub? No? Okay. Right, declaration of interest. To receive declaration of interest under one, pecuniary interest as defined by the Council Code of Conduct for the councillors? No? Thank you. B, pecuniary interest as defined by the Council Code of Conduct for councillors? None. And then, God forbid, notice under Section 106 Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of the community charge or council tax? None. Okay, thank you very much. Right, to move on to the agenda, item number 4 is to review of the managing rares of the council tax. A report to follow, but before I begin, I will ask our officer, Aftab, why we're pulling this report, because, can I hand it over to you, Aftab?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Happy to assist on this particular item. It was originally on the printed agenda, and that was following the draft report and the recommendations from the Task and Finish group. Having looked at those recommendations, I then liaised with the chair, and we felt that there was additional work to be undertaken in terms of engagement internally, particularly with housing services, to allow a more additional information to be given to the Task and Finish group to allow that feeding into the subsequent recommendations. So on that basis, it was suggested that this item be deferred to possibly the next meeting or thereafter to allow that task and finish group to benefit from that additional liaison internally with the housing services, which I think in my view, and that was shared once I liaised with the chair of the committee, to allow that information to be fed into the recommendations and the overall report.
Yeah, just to add to before you come in, I spoke to Michelle Dixon at the housing, and quite clearly we have a very large council stock, and you're looking around 4,000, and I would say majority, without making an assumption, that they are either on the benefits or some form of issue. And I think the council has recognized that there are likely to be people who are going to fall out of the net, and they have not been captured, the most important group of people. So it's not point. It was done by revenue officer, and totally, this is well before, I think, beginning of last year. And I just want to say, it's not point leaving a half-finished job when most of the other, tenants would be falling into this trap. Okay. Councillor Mrs. Mackenzie, and then Councillor Mrs. New, please. Okay.
Is mine on? Okay. I just had a really quick question relating to that report and whether it's possible for housing to answer the question about there have been a number of high-profile cases where people have died and they've been dead for quite a long time, and one of the indicators was they were not paying their council tax. And I just wanted to make sure that we had that flagged up in our processes, that if there is non-payment, that we actually don't have somebody who's dead, that we don't leave them for 7 years in their flat or their house dead because, nobody's checked what's happening with them. So when we consult with housing for this report, I'd be really interested to see that in line with the vulnerable, your mention, Councillor Mystery, about vulnerable people within our population, that we're not missing significant factors that we should do. And that's the one that springs to mind to me, but there's probably others that the council tax might flag as the canary in the coal mine.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Mrs. New.
Just a matter of clarification, Chair, the managing of council tax arrears wasn't just regarding the people in social housing, it was the general population as well, because it's not just people on benefits and social housing that get into arrears. Just clarify, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Mrs. New. The issue is what we can control, because we have the data within the housing department, and at least we know we get a sampling of it. It's a fair sampling, 4,000, and also probably we can convert that into a percentage. At least what we're trying to do is to raise the issue and trying to address it, which is for whole of Rugby, but you can't do anything unless you got the data and starts to work with it. That's the way we read it, and I think Michelle has also recognized that as well. Okay, thank you. Councillor Mrs. Parker.
I think it's a sensible approach, Chairman, and as we know from the reports presented in the past, about up to 70% of our tenants are in receipt of various benefits, but there is a sizable chunk that aren't, and that should not be discounted. Their opinion is as valuable as others, and I do share Councillor Mackenzie's concern over recent events. Those two stories were particularly horrific this spring, and if it can be included, I think that's welcome.
Thank you, Mrs. Park. Councillor Mrs. Park. I recognise that figure. I didn't want to, bend it. Yeah, Councillor Mrs. Livesey. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question about process, because the chair of that task and finish group is now portfolio holder. We'll need to think about how we're going to continue the work of that task group in that circumstance.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Livesey. And yes, just to respond, I certainly agree with the point that you're making, that it wouldn't be appropriate for the portfolio holder to continue with the task and finish group. So I think it's a matter for the chair to be standing down and to be replaced by another member. So thank you.
thanks for pointing that out. I think no members of the executive can be part of the task and scrutiny program anyway. That would have taken place. But what happens, I think, Chair, we need to sort that out. Who's going to lead, yeah? Thank you. Okay with it, then, that we move on, and thanks for your contribution. Switching this off. Right. Item 5, survey of the young people. This was kicked about from the council into the scrutiny well before Christmas, and clearly, I think what we would like to do is do a part of it. I know there is a strategy run by one of the officers who is looking into a long term between 2021 and 25, and the part of the program that we want to look at is young people. And my question is not good looking at me with the grey hair, what young people really want. So what we'd like to do is to do a one-page task and finish group, and that doesn't mean it's just going to be a one page and over and done with. So what I like to do on the actual paper, we can add on to it. I think if I remember, there are three what do you call it, issues that we need to look at it. One is how do young people want to be engaged, and secondly, what are the issues that young people want to be engaged upon, and thirdly, what issues are important to young people. It's not definitive, at least we're trying to lead, and then if there are others that you want to add to be part of the task and finish group, the call it mandate if you like, I'm more than happy to do that anyway. So the things that we were looking at is the membership of it, between 3 and 7 is a standard number of members. Look at the actual, who are the stakeholders that we need to go out, for example, youth clubs, young people, whatever. So, and the method how we communicate through, I've been told. So I'm happy to debate this, how we draft this task and finish group and see where we are. Councillor Mrs. Livesey, thank you.
One of the things I think we should be doing is looking to involve young people in actually doing this themselves, and potentially inviting some local young people to be part of that task and finish group, because I think it's nonsense if we go out and ask them what they want and then we decide what they're going to get. We need to actually involve them in the whole process.
Thank you for that. Councillor Mrs. Mackenzie, Councillor Mr. Councillor Lawrence, and then Councillor Barbara Brown. Thank you. Thank you,
Chair. When I first read this, I was a bit concerned that we want to survey 11 to 15 as 11 to 25 as a sort of block, because there's a world of difference between what people who are 11 and 25 are interested in, and I would be interested if we could break it down into 11 to 18 and 18 to 25, because it doesn't make any sense to have one survey covering such a wide range of need. My other question and concern is, where exactly is this, what information are you trying to gather, and where is it going to go within the council as to what services? So it's lovely to go to people with a blank sheet of paper and say, what do you want? But are we talking leisure facilities? Are we talking, yes, Lisa, please keep, because there's a whole bunch of, it's such a big question. My concern is it's actually just too big a question, and we need to focus on core services where we potentially can influence things, and it needs to be tightened up, I think, by the task and finish group to hold this together a bit better. And certainly I believe it should be split into 2 age groups at the very minimum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Lawrence, what I'll do, I'll listen to everything and then sum it up, see where we are with it. Thank you.
What you just said is exactly what I was going to say. I've got 2 children, which it's a stretch to call them children anymore. and 21 and 23. So I think absolutely, I think there's a definite split there, and whether it's 11 to 18, 18, 25, or we further split it, I don't think that matters too much, but I think definitely a split between the two. Educational needs against employment needs, there is a stretch there. I think probably, yeah, as
Okay, Councillor Lawrence, thank you very much. Councillor Mrs. Brown.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Part of mine was that, exactly that. And the other part is, can we think of a way to engage those people who perhaps are harder to reach, not just the usual suspects? So the ones that turn up to youth club every week and go to cadets, and you know, that's great, and we do need their opinion, and we do need the opinion of a broader spectrum of people, and it's difficult to do, I know. So I think that deserves a bit of thought. How do we get those that will have the most to gain from something that's coordinated?
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Brown. Councillor Mrs. Parker.
I think it's working. Oh, maybe. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with all the speakers. That you cannot compare an 11-year-old with a 25-year-old. I also don't like blank pieces of paper unless I'm writing an apology letter. But, you know, we need to be much more focused. This committee will have a lot to do over the course of the year. And my concern is, just as Councillor Mackenzie has said, we need to be focused about what benefit we can bring and the added value that this survey, if that's the word we're going to call it, will add to not only the people, the young people that we're aiming to help, but to this council and the council taxpayers who fund all the activities of this council. So we need not a shotgun approach, we need a rifle approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, Councillor Mrs. New.
And it's on. I think we also need to look at, this is going to open up quite a large box of worms, I think, because one of the biggest issues facing young people at the moment is mental health. We're hearing a lot about suicides in young people and young people having eating disorders and other things. So we need to also probably look at inviting other partners, like if we can get CAMS involved would be very helpful.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else wants to? Okay. Can I just say something? And I hear what you all have said. I think I get it, I think. And I got a background. I mean, I was a youth leader, you wouldn't believe it, back in the 70s and early 80s. I don't profess to be saying I'm the expert on it. I think you're absolutely right, the kind of two groups that have spoken to the Vice Chair, where we need to go break it up. The question is, you know, I know what Councillor Mrs. Parker says about the funding. We're not looking at spending any money because we don't know what we're going to spend on capitals or whatever. More we're looking at is that there is enough funding to look at what young people are doing. We can sit here and say, oh, well, we're not quite sure what's going on out there, what they need. So we're looking for a survey, trying to identify what the needs are. There are areas, somebody mentioned, education and, you know, whatever. We're not part of it. That's county and all that. We narrowed down what we could do as a borough to facilitate those young people in terms of doing it. So the money we're looking at, there is no resource in terms of, you know, people out there, you know, in the council who are prepared to give me 2 or 3 people to work on this project. We're looking at a small amount of money which we can find to run this survey, and I've heard all sorts of things. We could do it online. I'm open for that kind of suggestion. Do we go direct one-to-one to the youth club, etc., or invite people fast, you know, get a small group of people where we could do, yeah, and trying to talk to them with the councillors, officers, whatever they could do, and trying to get some idea where all the information comes, and then see what they do. So when I say a blank piece of paper, I'm not going to direct to say exactly what we're doing, but we need to do something what young people need. You know, a couple of things that came out, harder to reach groups, you know, other than, you know, people who are boys, you know, scouts or girls, whatever, guide, etc., boys brigade, all that. They are well organized. There are, you know, people, you know, Hill Street, Rugby boys, where people don't conform, if that makes sense, to uniform. So those are the kind of people that we should be looking to. And the other thing that came out was mental health. Yeah, it's affecting a lot of young people since COVID. So I think there's a lot of work to do, and let's see where we are with it. Councillor Mrs. Brown.
Sorry, Sid, just very quickly, I think the really crucial thing in this is purpose, and I think Councillor Parker brought it up first of all. If we're really clear about why we're doing it, that kind of drives the shape of it, doesn't it? So what do we want as an outcome to start with? Is it a very broad picture of children and young people in rugby as they stand at the minute, what they value, what they think is important, what they want to have a say in? Or is it something more practical that says, okay, this is what the council can offer, what from this menu do you think you'd be interested in finding out more about? So that's, I just think it's really focusing on that that's important. Why are we doing it? Thanks.
Just through you, Chair, and thank you for your observations, Councillor Brown, and the remaining members of the committee. And I certainly agree with the purpose observation that you've just been made. It has to be very clear upon the objective of this task and finish group, and that's why we've given the initial parameters of what's set out within the report. And that's why the suggested approach is delegated authority to myself to liaise with you all to ensure that there is also that communication internally, because as set out within the report, this will feed into the upcoming communications and engagement strategy. So, as I said, we can certainly share that clear objective and purpose within the parameters that are set out within the report, and have that feedback from committee members once that more detailed scope is shared.
Councillor Mrs. Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chair. Would it be possible to go back to Councillor Slinger and Councillor O'Rourke, who put the original motion at Council, and ask them what they envisaged within it, whether they were looking at something that was, what do you think about the environment? How should our environment, how should we be working to improve our environment over the next 10 years kind of questions, or whether it's, do you want a new skate park kind of questions? What they had in mind with their when they originally tasked us, and I think that might help steer which direction, because I can see benefits to both of those two conversations. One on a long term, how do our young people want to live here in Rugby, and on the short term, what will make your life more fun or more interesting or beneficial or whatever. So sort of could we write back to them and ask them for a steer?
Yeah, we did have a teams between myself, Aftab and John Slinger, who's the instigator, and we had a instigator of the notice of motion. So be careful what I say on microphone. I think we know what direction he wants to go. I hear what you're saying, Councillor Mrs. Mackenzie, that we take back and bring back on John to say what it is and write to us, and put it down in black and white, exactly what it is, to start the base. Obviously, when we do it, I hope he's part of that scrutiny committee, if you like, I should say the task force. Are we all clear in that we go ahead to form the task and finish group between 3 and 7, is that about right, membership? And then draw up. Councillor Mrs. Livesey.
Yeah, I did make a specific proposal that task and finish group should include some young people.
Yes. Yeah. I did say, well, when you say part of it, I don't know how it works, but we can actually bring them on board, if that makes sense. And then if you want to co-opt, you have to be careful what we do, what the procedure is, actually co-opting members onto the scrutiny or task and finish group. That's probably, I think there is a bit of flexibility. After, you want to come back on that if it's okay?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and just through you. In terms of, we will look at from a procedural perspective whether it's because the normal course of processes for members of councillors to be on task and finish groups, but if we are able to, then certainly we can look at we can accommodate a stakeholder representative being on the task and finish group.
Morris.
I actually think I back you, Councillor Livesey, but maybe it's subtly differently in terms of, I think what we're trying to do is acquire data. From that, you would usually run some sort of survey or some way of doing that, and maybe it's the creation of that survey is where we should be using young people to develop the questions. I think we are here assuming what those questions are. How about making them create the questions?
Yeah, thank you for all your input. I think we get in the gist of what the committee wants to take the direction in. I listen. How we need to go about is a mechanism that we need. We're not talking about spending a lot of big money, yeah? So I want to rest assure people that we just want to do a survey. I've been assured by the officer, senior officer, we can do with it, yeah, within the budget. So let's have a go and find a direction where we can go with the young people. Are we all clear on that? Or? All right. Okay, thank you very much for your input and the suggestion. Before I clear it, item 5, summary is that 2, the committee is asked to consider the setting up of a task and finish group as detailed within this report, yeah, which I said it, but I need to do it formally. And then 2, delegated authority be granted to the Chief Officer, Legal and Governance, in consultation with the members of the Scrutiny Committee to formulate a one-page strategy to detail the objectives of the task and finish group. That's formally moved. Do you have a seconder? Okay. All right. Okay. So we all happy with it? Okay. Thank you. Why switch the microphone on? Right. Thank you very much for that. And then what we're looking at is the next one is the overview and scrutiny work program. I think that if you look at it, there's a lot of to be advised gaps in it. Is that the one? Yeah. Right. So there are a couple of items on it that we need to deal with it, and which are the program that's been running for a while. If you look at it on item 6, under current reviews, 1.2, we got access to emergency health care provision, and that needs to be, I think that was led by one of the officers. And can I just ask the officer, where are we with that? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just to outline, as set out within the report, the work is continuing in terms of the task and finish group, with the next meeting to be held in September, and thereafter, when appropriate, a recommendation can be put forward to the committee itself.
Okay, the chair of it, I think, has been dialoguing with Dan Green, that's Councillor Sanderson, and clearly, I think we have cleared the air, I think now, about the role, to bring the external, I'm sitting on it, I'm just picking up the halfway through the year, because the mayor is now no longer taking part in there. So hopefully it will move. It is quite a big task to us, and it just needs external bodies to come in and intervene, because we are not responsible for the healthcare in such a way, but we are part of that, setup. So hopefully now we got it cleared, I think, on Monday. So Councillor Mrs. Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me, I'm new to how the scrutiny, I'm not new to it. I'm new to it in this chamber. Right? how the process actually works. It's hard to scrutinise something that you haven't got the detail on. So I've got no idea what background work has been done on this and why it's taken so long to progress, but I think it's a reasonable question to ask. Why has it taken so long to move from where it started to we haven't even got a report?
I just picked it up first meeting, in this municipal year, and it's just getting the stakeholder to, you can ask, yeah, you can't demand that, force them. So hopefully now we clear the air. I'll speak to the chair, Councillor Sanderson. I can have a little meeting where we are to get me up to stream. And then, and he was frustrated. That's email that was exchanging between the office, our officers and himself, and he copied me in. And I was trying to pick up where it was either, so I am not quite up to stream what it is. So I will ask him to brief me and the vice chair, and hopefully we can pick something up, yeah? So can we get on that? Okay, thank you. Right, the next one, you're not going to like it either. Managing Council tax rares. Now, I'll just, yeah, you're going to come back, yeah. So we're going to just pull back. I think it was just mentioned earlier. It's something that we already discussed, earlier with the other one. So, Aftab, can we just give me an update on the managing the council tax rares?
Yes, so thank you, Chair. And as outlined earlier, it's a matter of further engagement internally to the task and finish group, and then thereafter a subsequent recommendation can be brought forward.
We did touch on it, about our housing officer to be involved, and don't ask me how we got this far yet. So we're all picking up. I think we're all new to this committee, and we need to get upstream very quickly. So hopefully I will have a chance to speak to Michelle Dixon and see what she exactly wants to do, and look at what was done by the revenue at the time. So you can see why we're pulling it back a little bit, yeah? Okay, thank you very much. That was 1.3. 1.4, and this is the new one that's come on stream, development on the landlord forum, and we're just looking at, have we drafted the one-page policy? I think I've seen it. And after, you want to just outline that one and then see where we are with it, yeah? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, just because of the PERDA period and the restrictions that gave, the task and finish group was put on hold. Now following the new municipal year, we've been able to have the relevant nominees of the task and finish group, and scheduled dates will be put in the diary to allow the task and finish group to convene and commence their work.
Okay, thank you very much, Aftab. Some of us have been here quite a long time, if you remember, this was something probably as long as 20, 25 years, been kicking around in housing department, trying to create a landlord forum. All it is good practice. We as a council, we have our own rules, we control our stock, and we manage it pretty well, yeah. But out there is a fair chunk, which is, you got small landlord, you got well-organized group of, landlord, and it's all mixed match. And at the end of the day, the people that we are trying to serve, it doesn't help, and in terms of you got HMOs and all sorts of things that goes on. That's where it falls in, where the landlords are single property, multi, occupancy, all sorts of things. And it's a private sector that we need to not control it, set a standard whereby people who live in it lives in a place which is fit for purpose and are treated fairly and in that respect. So hopefully, if you can, this has been kicking around since November, and it's just asking the committee to consider that motion and decide how they want to deal with it. So I'm open for debate. Councillor Lawrence.
As I recall this, there was a landlord forum which existed previously and for a number of years was quite successful. However, as I understood it, it ceased to be successful because there was a lack of attendance. So I understood the motion, well, the task group in front of us is go and understand why that didn't succeed and what it would take to become successful again. So it wasn't to actually go and establish a land room forum, it's just to understand the conditions of which that was successful, which I'm totally for. Okay.
Anybody else wants to? Within the system, I still believe we don't want to reinvent the wheel. Steve Shanahan, I think that's the name, I couldn't remember, had already kicked it off. Heather, can you remember a long while back again? I was involved at the time because I was part of the housing. So there are within the system, I'll speak to Michelle, that there are already data and paperwork already set up, and it just needs just now that in the last 15, 20 years, there are a hell of a lot of private landlord in the system, and let's try to at least manage, both sides, a good landlord and helping to serve the people, who actually rent those places, and set a standard. And the one thing, we can't compel them to do it. It has to be volunteers, yeah? So don't get this thing that this council is going to go with a big stick and deliver that kind of issue. So really, it can only ask people to volunteer, yeah? And if you're a good landlord and they want to be credited with that, they'll be happy to do it. It's a two-way business for them and for the client that we represent. Is that a little bit clear to what I'm trying to get at? Okay, right. If that's the case, the summary is that on 23rd of November, 2022, Council referred a motion to Scrutiny Committee in accordance with the Council Standing Order 11, and the committee is asked to consider the motion and decide how it should be dealt with. I think we already drafted the task and finish group, whatever. So shall we say that same again, we open up the membership between 3 and 7, and I think the brief is already on there, isn't it? I think you just send it over to me. Do you want to spell it out, the brief, or? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, just coming back to the point that was outlined by Councillor Lawrence. Yes, that's correct. In terms of the scope of the task and finish group, is to look at the various options in terms of a landlord forum, and that was set out within the original report that was taken to committee. And the decision was taken by the committee to set up the task and finish group. We are at the stage of having nominees of that group being put forward, and as outlined by the chair of the committee, if members are happy, then they will commence their work and bring back a recommendation for this committee to consider.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think what I'd like to do, just quickly, if you look at the overview and scrutiny work program going forward for the next meeting, it's a long way away, 11th of September, I think, and there are a lot of to be advised item on it, and also, I think, if I'm correct, that who we need to invite so we can, in terms of portfolio, the leaders and the senior officer, and we can sort of, I wouldn't call it interrogation, at least we can scrutinize the program they're doing. And what I was thinking, I think, because there are pressing issues that are going on, it doesn't have to come via notice of motion. I think as a committee, there are things that we could develop, for example, the one thing that is pressing, and I don't think there is a councillor in this chamber who hasn't had a call from residents or many to say our call centre system isn't working very well, where somebody has to do that half an hour, and if you can't get through the system, then they come to you, me, others. And I've had 3 already this week, you know. So what I would like to do, I think we had earmarked one portfolio, which was regulation and safety portfolio holder, and chief officer for regulation and safety. That would have been Councillor on the 11th. It would have been Councillor Paul, is it? Yeah, and the officer was Councillor David Burrows. Okay. What I thought as well, and if you leave it again, I would like to call up also the Community Home Digital and Communication Portfolio holder, which is Tim Willis, just to be specific on the call centre, and also the Mike Connell. I've asked him, and they'd be happy to come over. So it's not usual, but I think we'll just spend a little bit of time, control the meeting. Question is going to be very strategic, and then say, where are they with it? Give us an update and how we deal with it. Would be happy to get 2 portfolio, which has not been done. Councillor Mrs. Parker.
I couldn't agree more, Chair. I don't think there's a councillor in this chamber who isn't sharing the frustration of our residents who are struggling to access our services through the channels that we've provided for them. And we need to reassess. We're not in the lockdown. We need to progress this. And I wholly support your recommendation to shift the portfolio holder for safety to another meeting, and I think it's the sensible.
I think we can do both. I think it doesn't matter. If you time it well, control the meeting, we can do it in a way, because otherwise you're going back to December, and before you know, it is going to carry on. I think if you put a pressure, they need to deliver some of the quick fix, yeah? That's what I want to call it. It's not trying to catch anybody. There is a wider issue, and we as a councillors are getting it in the neck, nobody else, yeah? Sorry to say. Councillor Lawrence.
I agree with both of you, Chair, and Councillor Parker. I think what I would like to see, and you, as you said, let's make this quite efficient, is that we have data presented to us well in advance of the meeting, particularly when it comes to call centres and things like that. There's a lot of metric data, and we would like to see, I think, that data presented to us regularly from this point, not just this next meeting, but monthly or something in that order.
I think that's a very good point. I really do like, and I've said to the Vice Chair, and part of that process, and see it for ourselves. And I also ask the members, if you want to, it'd be a good idea to see the other side of the face, what the public are facing, and ask the question, and then formulate that way. I would rather, it's a two-way. Let's engage with the officer rather than having a slanging match in emails and all that, yeah? It doesn't get very far. So I think I'll talk to Councillor Mrs. Mackenzie that we go and have a look at it, ask the question, and then say, right, can we see where we are progressing and bring that report, what Councillor Lawrence said, it will be a positive way. But I think we'll get both portfolio holder. If you stay putting round, it's not to catch anybody. Half will be probably written down and addressed as we're going along. So this is the committee dealing with it, and it's not coming through the notice of motion. So we could be doing without having a brief written down. You go along, do what you need to do, collect it, and let's present it, yeah? Okay, anybody else wants to add? Go on.
Thank you, Chair. And just to emphasise the point in terms of the role of this committee is to scrutinise specific portfolio holders and specific issues, and in respect of the matter that's been identified within this debate, i.e. the calls that are coming into the council, it's important that councillors understand the issues, the matters that are being put in place, and have all the information to make an informed conclusion in terms of the matters that are being brought to councillors within this chamber and outside of this chamber.
Okay, let me just sum it up on what's going to happen on the 11th of September. So we got to have a crime and disorder item, which is annual overview. I think when Commander Jim Rankin, is it, came here, and I think was decided, I think Councillor Poole, who is actually on the member of that committee, Rugby Community Safety Partnership now. Is it still Councillor Poole? Or is still there, yeah? Obviously, you know, I think it was picked up at the leaders group meeting that various people are sitting on it, and he is a representative. We don't see as a committee the minutes of what is discussed. It is in public domain, but it doesn't get filtered. So there are a lot of action being done on our behalf, and I think it's mindful to say, if you get the minutes of those things, at least before the annual review the scrutiny is done, we want to know what they actually are doing rather than catching. There's nothing to catch anybody out. So hopefully we'll have a chat and see whether that minute becomes a formal review. I don't know how often they meet, because all the various agencies on it, and Councillor Poole is our representative on as a partner. And then the other one is that we're going to call Councillor Poole anyway, so there'll be two done at the same time. And obviously we moved the survey of the young people, which we just decided. So that will be on the 11th. And then this is something, Councillor Eccleston is not here anymore. The draft overview and scrutiny annual report is almost ready, I believe, for the 2022-23 for the last municipal year. And hopefully that should be signed off, not by me, but I would request the leader of the council to sign on behalf of should have been the chair, okay? If that's okay with you. It's already done, so it's not, I'm not going to write something to take credit for something that's fait to complete, yeah? All right, you happy with that? Okay. Councillor Mrs. Levesey. Oh.
Right, just one thing. On the 28th of September last year, I proposed a notice of motion on warm banks that was referred to Scrutiny Committee, and it's not actually on this work plan.
Just through you, Chair, and responding to Councillor Lives's point, we can feed back outside of this meeting. I'm just trying to jog my memory in terms of whether that fed into the work undertaken in terms of the cost of living group that was convened. But we can. Okay, I can see that you're shaking your head.
I followed up with a question at a later council meeting, and I was told that there would be a survey done to find out how many warm banks there were across the borough. And I would expect to see that work undertaken.
Okay, we can look into that and provide you that input, Councillor Livesey. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that input. I think we'll pick that up and make sure it goes on it. Does anybody, before I close, want to add anything? Councillor Lawrence.
We have an item there which is about the corporate strategy delivery plan and potential scrutiny topics coming through. Could we have a date by which that would be coming through? That's question one. Question two is we have a corporate risk strategy register, which I don't think I've ever seen. Is there an opportunity for that to be shared with the Scrutiny Committee? I have two items to add to it coming from planning.
Let me see if it's correct. The corporate strategy is coming up in the cabinet, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's an item on the cabinet for the 26th of June, if that's the document you're talking about. The corporate cabinet. I've read it, so I'm just. If you read the cabinet paper, which is coming for the 26th. You should have received it. Have a look at it, and I have a feeling there's a picture of Derek, Paul, and the Chief Executive Manny, and you've got a lovely 20-page corporate strategy on it, all the things that we're doing on it. Am I in the right direction, or?
The question is, are there any potentially scrutiny topics coming from that, is the question.
I hear what you're saying. It's still going through the voting process. So it'll go to the cabinet on the 26th, which will then go, I've read it so I can say, it'll go for recommendation to full council on the 12th of July. And once that becomes, then we can scrutinize. At the moment, I don't know how the rule works. It's sitting in the, to go forward, yeah? Can I?
Shall I just...
Okay.
So that was just to raise that question, yeah.
Just to provide some clarification, Councillor Lawrence, and through you, Chair, I think the specific point that you're referring to is the upcoming report in respect of delivering the corporate strategy, and that's what's been outlined by the Chair. And previously, that particular document has coincided with the annual item whereby the Chief Executive and the leader attend this scrutiny committee. So my expectation would be that that document, along with the wider scrutiny of both the Chief Executive and leader, is considered jointly in respect of that item. There is a much wider point in terms of how this committee and the formulation of the work programme supports the work that is undertaken internally, and that work is primarily focused on the corporate strategy. So it's whether this committee can support that work, and we've seen an example of that in respect of tonight in terms of the young person survey and how that feeds into the wider communications and engagement strategy. So I think that's a matter for all members to consider, and future reports and direction can be given, which can be considered by members of the committee in respect of how they formulate the upcoming work programme. So hopefully that provides some clarification, but if not, happy to allude any further in terms of questions of what I've just outlined.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think what I'm trying to say, we don't want to wait till the next meeting. You know, like call centre example, we as a member, you can scrutinize it. If you go through and say, it's not going to wait in 3 months, something that needs to be fixed today or tomorrow and not next year, yeah? So let's drive it, and I'm more than happy to work with the officers and trying to accommodate and trying to deliver what is fit for purpose, I think. Does it make sense? Take the call centre, it's a good example as any, yeah? And this is what we do, the service deliver, rather than doing scrutiny which brings in outside agency, etc., to do that, yeah? So let's try to do the one, I want to try this, the one of the call centre is a good example. Let's try to drive it, and if me and the Vice Chair go over and have a look at it, convenience, you know, and then I suggest that if it works, that you as a member also make a time to go and have a look around. I don't know how big is the area, I haven't been for a while, so how much they can accommodate, okay? Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you for your response, Chair, and AFDAB. That's exactly what I was after. Thank you for that one. I had a secondary part to my question I asked, and that was about the risk register, and how does that come through to us in scrutiny. I've recently added 2 items, I hope, to that risk register. I would like to be able to scrutinise it to see if those 2 items have gone through to it.
Yes, apologies, Councillor Lawrence, I didn't address that latter point which escaped me. So in terms of the corporate risk register, yes, we certainly do have a corporate risk register. That can be shared with you as a member of this committee, and if you are of the view that there is a specific project and work that needs to be undertaken in respect of that risk register and the scope of this committee, then that can be looked at and fed into the wider work programme.
Are we clear on that, Councillor Lawrence? Okay, thank you, Aftab, for that. Right, can I just say thank you very much. I haven't chaired a meeting for a long